At 58, she wasn't fired, she was erased. 34 years of loyalty, reduced to a paragraph in a meeting room. And the most terrifying part, it wasn't losing the job, it was realizing she had no idea who she was without it. That afternoon, standing outside a corporate building in Chicago, holding a cardboard box, she faced a question no woman wants to ask at this age. Is this the end of my usefulness, or the beginning of something they never saw coming? Because what happened next, no HR department could have predicted. Suzanne Miller had always believed that loyalty meant security. For 34 years, she had walked through the glass doors of Whitmore Logistics in downtown Chicago. She knew the building's scent, the hum of its elevators, the rhythm of its fluorescent lights. Her name had once carried weight in conference rooms filled with executives. That Monday morning felt no different, until it did. The email arrived at 9:17 a.m., short and impersonal. Mandatory strategy meeting, las 10:00 am. Conference room B. She assumed it was about quarterly projections or shipping delays. Susan adjusted her navy blazer and reviewed her notes carefully. Preparation had always been her armor. Conference room B felt colder than usual. 3 HR representatives sat at the far end of the table. Her direct supervisor avoided eye contact. A folder rested in front of her seat, already opened. Something inside her chest tightened. The word restructuring floated across the room like artificial perfume. Market adaptation, digital transformation, new leadership direction. Each phrase carefully chosen, carefully rehearsed. Susan listened, spine straight, hands folded. Her position, they explained, was being eliminated. The company needed fresh technological perspectives. Her contributions were appreciated. Her service would not be forgotten. She heard herself ask measured questions. Severance details, healthcare coverage duration, transition timelines. Her voice sounded calm, almost detached. Inside, something cracked quietly. Not anger, not yet. More like erosion. Like watching a shoreline disappear, grain by grain. 34 years reduced to a paragraph. When the meeting ended, no one walked her out. She packed framed photos into a cardboard box. A ceramic mug that read "World's Best Problem Solver." A retirement card someone had once jokingly given her. Now, it felt prophetic. Outside, Chicago's skyline reflected against the river. Wind from Lake Michigan cut sharply across the street. People rushed past her in tailored coats and quick ambition. The world had not paused for her dismissal. The city remained indifferent. As she stood there holding the box, Susan realized something terrifying. It wasn't just her job that had ended. It was the version of herself she had built around it, and she had no idea who she was without it. The drive back to Naperville felt longer than usual. Traffic blurred into a gray ribbon of noise. Susan kept both hands firmly on the steering wheel. She had not turned on the radio. Silence felt more honest. Her house greeted her with stillness. The suburban street looked unchanged, predictable. Mail waited neatly inside the box by the door. A neighbor waved casually from across the lawn. No one knew her life had shifted. She placed the cardboard box on the kitchen counter. The room smelled faintly of vanilla and old wood. Afternoon light filtered through lace curtains. This kitchen had witnessed decades of routine dinners. Today, it felt unfamiliar. Emily arrived shortly after 6. Her heels clicked confidently against the hardwood floor. She was still wearing her corporate badge around her neck. "Mom, you're home early." Susan forced a small smile. The explanation came out steadier than expected. "Restructuring," she repeated. Emily frowned, processing quickly. "They gave you a package, right?" Practicality before emotion. "They did," Susan replied. A pause lingered between them. "Well, maybe this is good," Emily offered carefully. "You've worked your whole life. Maybe it's time to relax." Relax. The word felt foreign. That night, after Emily retreated to her room, Susan remained alone in the kitchen. She opened a drawer she rarely touched anymore. Inside lay her mother's handwritten recipe notebook. Its pages were worn, corners softened by time. She ran her fingers over looping cursive ink, cinnamon rolls, apple pie, honey wheat bread, memories baked into measurements. Without fully deciding to, she preheated the oven. Flour dusted the counter like fresh snow. Yeast bloomed in warm milk. The scent of cinnamon slowly filled the air. Something inside her began to breathe again. As the rolls rose beneath a clean towel, Susan leaned against the counter and watched them. Expansion where there had been flatness, warmth where there had been cold. For the first time since the meeting, she felt movement. The next morning, the house still carried the warmth of cinnamon. Sunlight stretched across the kitchen counter in pale gold stripes. Susan stood quietly, staring at the tray of cooled rolls. They looked imperfect, slightly uneven, beautifully real. She hadn't baked like that in years. Emily wandered in, half awake and scrolling her phone. She stopped mid-step when she saw the counter. "Oh my God, Mom. These look amazing." Susan shrugged lightly, pretending indifference. "It's just an old recipe." Emily took a quick photo before Susan could protest. "Natural light is perfect right now," she muttered. Within seconds, the image was posted on Instagram, captioned, "My mom stress bakes better than most bakeries." Susan barely paid attention. They shared one roll at the small kitchen table. The dough was soft, the icing slightly melted. Emily closed her eyes after the first bite. "You could sell these," she said casually. Susan laughed at the absurdity. By noon, Emily's phone wouldn't stop buzzing. Comments stacked beneath the photo. "Where can I order? Do you ship? These look unreal." Susan felt her pulse quicken as Emily read them aloud. People from neighboring towns were asking for prices. A local fitness studio requested 2 dozen for an event. Someone even offered prepayment through Venmo. This was no longer a joke. "It's just the algorithm," Susan insisted. Things trend for no reason, but her hands trembled slightly. Hope can be more frightening than failure. It demands risk. Emily looked at her differently now. Not as a mother who had lost something, but as someone who might be building something. "Let's just try one batch for sale," she said. "What's the worst that could happen?" The question lingered in the kitchen air. Susan thought of conference room B, of the word restructuring, of how easily she had been replaced. Perhaps she had already experienced the worst. That afternoon, she wrote a simple list: ingredients cost, packaging ideas, possible price per dozen. Her handwriting felt steadier than it had all week. A quiet spark had been lit, and as the oven warmed once again, Susan realized something subtle but undeniable. This time, she wasn't baking to cope. She was baking with intention, and intention changes everything. By Friday, Susan had 6 confirmed orders, all local pickups, all prepaid. The money sat untouched in her Venmo account. It felt strangely official. She woke before sunrise on Saturday. The house was silent, wrapped in early morning blue. Coffee brewed while she tied her apron. There was nervous energy in her movements. This felt different from casual baking. Flour coated the counter in soft clouds. Timers beeped in disciplined rhythm. Trays rotated carefully inside the oven. The kitchen transformed into controlled chaos. Susan felt alive inside it. Emily designed a simple, printable label. "Homemade by Susan Miller." Below it, smaller letters, "Naperville, Illinois." Susan stared at the paper longer than necessary. Her name had not felt important in days. The first customer arrived at 10 sharp, a young woman in athletic wear. She smiled widely at the scent in the doorway. "These are for my studio's brunch," she explained. Susan handed over the box with careful hands. "Are you planning to open a bakery?" The question caught Susan off guard. She opened her mouth, then hesitated. I'm just starting," she replied softly. The woman nodded, impressed. After the door closed, Susan exhaled deeply. It wasn't about the money. It was about the exchange, the acknowledgement. Someone valued what she made. By afternoon, all 6 orders were gone. Her feet ached from standing. Her shoulders were dusted in flour. But she hadn't felt this satisfied in years. Work had meaning again. That evening, Emily refreshed Instagram repeatedly. Followers had doubled. Messages continued pouring in. Some supportive, some not. One comment stood out sharply. "Cute grandma hobby. Let the pros handle business." Susan read it twice. The words lingered heavier than expected. Age, once invisible, now felt weaponized. She set her phone down slowly. The kitchen was quiet again. Success had arrived with applause, but also with scrutiny. And this time, she would have to decide how to respond. Before we move on, if you've ever felt invisible after 50, take a second to like this video. And if you believe reinvention is possible at any age, subscribe because this story is only getting deeper. Now, let's see what happened when the internet decided to test her. The comment refused to leave her mind. Cute grandma hobby. Susan had faced pressure before. Deadlines, audits, corporate restructuring. But this felt personal. She opened her laptop that night. The screen's brightness felt almost accusatory. Emily had created a basic Instagram business account. There were analytics, engagement graphs, unfamiliar icons. It looked like a foreign language. "What's a conversion rate?" Susan asked quietly. Emily sighed, then softened her tone. "It just means how many people actually buy." Susan nodded, pretending confidence. Inside, doubt stirred again. She searched for free online courses: how to start a small food business, digital marketing for beginners, social media growth strategies. Each video featured someone under 30. Fast-talking instructors used acronyms casually: SEO, CTR, ROI. Susan wrote each one down carefully, her notebook filled with definitions. Learning felt slower now, heavier. The next morning, she attempted her first video. Her hands trembled while pressing record. "Hi, I'm Susan," she began awkwardly. She stopped and deleted it immediately. Her voice sounded older than she remembered. On the third attempt, she kept going. She explained her mother's recipe: the way yeast needs patience, the importance of warmth. The metaphor was not lost on her. When she posted the video, she expected ridicule. Instead, the first comment read, "My grandmother used to bake like this." Another followed, "This feels real." By evening, the video had 5,000 views, not viral, but growing steadily. Strangers thanked her for showing the process, for not editing out mistakes. Authenticity, it seemed, had currency. Still, exhaustion wrapped around her shoulders. Learning technology felt like climbing uphill in sand. Every new feature required adaptation. Every success demanded more effort. But for the first time, effort felt voluntary. Orders increased modestly that week, not overwhelming, but consistent. Susan tracked expenses carefully in spreadsheets. Old corporate habits resurfaced. Structure brought comfort. Ingredient costs rose faster than expected. Butter prices fluctuated. Packaging materials added up. Profit margins were thinner than imagined. Reality settled in firmly. One evening, Susan opened her retirement account online. The numbers stared back at her. Decades of discipline condensed into digits. This was her safety net, her future security. Emily noticed the tension immediately. "You're not thinking of investing that, are you?" Her tone sharpened unexpectedly. "That money is for stability, for emergencies." Susan closed the laptop halfway. "What if this is my opportunity?" she asked gently. Emily crossed her arms. "Or what if it's a phase?" The word stung. Silence thickened between them. Generations often misunderstand risk differently. For Emily, stability meant upward mobility. For Susan, stability had just disappeared. Perspective changes everything. Later that night, Susan sat alone at the kitchen table. The house was quiet again. She listed potential equipment upgrades: a larger mixer, professional packaging. She calculated carefully. A modest investment would accelerate growth. Without it, progress would crawl. But if sales slowed, the loss would be personal. She remembered Conference Room B, how security had evaporated without warning. Retirement funds had not protected her dignity. Loyalty had not guaranteed permanence. Safety, she realized, is sometimes an illusion. The next morning, she transferred a small portion. Not reckless, not impulsive, deliberate. A decision made with steady hands. When Emily saw the new mixer delivered that afternoon, she didn't argue. She simply watched her mother assemble it carefully. And for the first time, she began to understand that this wasn't a hobby. The new mixer changed the rhythm of the kitchen. It hummed with professional confidence. Susan moved with greater efficiency now. Orders increased gradually each week. Momentum was building. One Tuesday evening, she posted another video. This time, she spoke directly to the camera. "No filters," she said softly. "Just flour, patience, and a second chance." She pressed publish before she could hesitate. The videos spread faster than the others. 10,000 views by midnight. Shares from accounts she didn't recognize. Comments multiplied rapidly. So did scrutiny. At first, encouragement dominated. "You inspire my mom. My aunt needs to see this. This is proof it's never too late." Susan read each one carefully. Then came the shift. A larger account reposted her clip. The caption read, "Corporate grandma tries influencer life." Laughing emojis followed. The tone changed instantly. Criticism flooded in waves. "You're too old for this platform. Stick to knitting. This is embarrassing." The words pierced deeper than expected. Susan sat frozen at the kitchen table. The glow of the phone illuminated her face. Her reflection on the dark screen looked tired. Was this bravery or humiliation? Doubt whispered loudly. Emily noticed the silence. She took the phone gently from her mother's hand. Mom, this happens to everyone online. It's engagement. But Susan wasn't convinced. For 34 years, her competence had never been questioned publicly. Now strangers dissected her worth in seconds. Age had become a headline, and she had no HR department to buffer it. That night, she didn't delete the video. Her finger hovered over the option. Instead, she turned off the phone. She would not erase herself to make others comfortable. But the weight of visibility had just doubled. The next morning felt heavier. Susan moved slower through her routine. Even the mixer's hum sounded distant. The kitchen, once sanctuary, felt exposed. Visibility changes spaces. A knock at the door interrupted her thoughts. Helen stood outside holding a small bouquet. I saw your video, she said simply. Her eyes were steady. And I saw the comments. Susan attempted a polite smile. It's just the internet, she murmured. Helen stepped inside without waiting for invitation. No, she replied firmly. It's fear disguised as mockery. They sat at the kitchen table. Steam curled from 2 mugs of tea. Helen's voice softened slightly. When I opened my bookstore at 55, they called it a retirement hobby. Susan looked up, surprised. I didn't know that. Helen nodded. They laughed until I made a profit. Then they called me brave. Silence settled thoughtfully between them. Mockery often precedes respect. Doubt often precedes growth. Helen reached across the table. You're not embarrassed, she said. You're visible. The word landed differently. Visibility meant risk, but it also meant impact. Susan absorbed the distinction slowly. What if they're right? Susan asked quietly. What if I'm too old for this? Helen smiled gently. Too old for what? For learning. Susan felt something shift inside her chest. She thought about the comments again, about strangers projecting their limits onto her, about how easily she had internalized them, and how quickly she could reject them. That afternoon, she returned to her phone, not to defend herself, not to argue, but to post again. Consistency, she decided, would be her answer. 3 weeks after the viral criticism, Susan's following had tripled. Not explosive, but steady. Women over 50 began messaging her privately. Their stories echoed her own. One Thursday morning, an email appeared in her inbox. Subject line, partnership opportunity, Chicago Artisan Foods. She assumed it was spam at first. It wasn't. The company was a regional gourmet brand, well-funded, established in upscale grocery chains. They praised her relatable authenticity. They saw market potential. By afternoon, she was on a Zoom call. 2 polished executives smiled professionally. They complimented her resilience, her demographic appeal, her brand story. Then came the proposal. They wanted to develop a product line under her name, frozen cinnamon rolls, prepackaged dough kits, national distribution within a year. Her breath caught slightly. National distribution, security, scale, validation. But the next slide shifted the tone. All recipes would be reformulated internally. Brand decisions handled by their marketing team. She would serve as the face, not the creator. You'd be an inspiration figure, one executive explained smoothly. Consumers love transformation narratives. They spoke about her as if she were a campaign, not a woman. Susan asked about creative control. There was a pause. Collaborative input. They clarified carefully. Final decisions, however, would remain corporate. When the call ended, she remained seated at the kitchen table. The offer glittered with stability, but something about it felt familiar. Structured, controlled, replaceable. That evening, Susan printed the proposal. 22 pages of legal language, projected earnings highlighted in bold. Numbers she had not seen since her corporate days. Comfort disguised as opportunity. Emily read it twice. This is huge, Mom. Her voice carried cautious excitement. You wouldn't have to stress about scaling. It's security. Mark, when she called him, didn't hesitate at all. You take it, he said firmly. This is what winning looks like. Don't overthink it. But Susan couldn't ignore the unease. She reread the clause about recipe ownership, her mother's cinnamon formula, generations condensed into corporate property. The thought unsettled her deeply. That night, she barely slept. Security whispered seductively. No more algorithm anxiety. No more unpredictable sales. A guaranteed paycheck again. Yet another voice countered quietly. Wasn't that what she had before? Guaranteed salary, guaranteed structure, guaranteed replaceability. She walked into the kitchen before sunrise. The mixer stood proudly on the counter. Flour traces lingered from yesterday's work. This space was hers, not curated, not approved. Helen arrived mid-morning, as if sensing the tension. After hearing the details, she leaned back slowly. "They don't want your bakery," she said. "They want your story." And stories, Helen continued, lose power when someone else controls the ending. The sentence settled heavily in the room. Susan stared at the printed contract again. For the first time, the numbers looked smaller. By evening, she knew the truth. The offer promised stability, but it demanded surrender. And she had already surrendered enough. In conference room B, the contract remained on the kitchen table all morning, unsigned, unmoved, heavy in its silence. Susan circled it as if it might speak first. Emily watched her carefully. "You don't have to prove anything," she said softly. "This is a smart move." But Susan heard something underneath. Fear disguised as logic. By noon, Susan opened her laptop. Instead of reviewing numbers, she replayed her earliest videos. The shaky camera, the flour on her cheek. She saw something there. Not polish, not marketing strategy, but honesty and ownership. At 2:17 p.m., she drafted an email. Professional, grateful, clear. She declined the offer. Her finger hovered over send. Security on one side, self-respect on the other. Conference room B flashed in memory. She pressed send. The response arrived within minutes. Brief, polite, regretful, final. Her chest tightened immediately, not with doubt, but with adrenaline. She had just refused national distribution. She had chosen uncertainty. Without allowing herself time to retreat, she set up her camera. This time, no script, no rehearsal, just truth. She looked directly into the lens. "My name is Susan Miller," she began. "I was replaced at 58. Her voice did not tremble. "They said I didn't fit the future." She told them everything. The meeting, the restructuring, the offer she had just declined. "And I will not shrink again," she finished. She uploaded the video before fear could intervene. Then she turned off her phone. Not to escape, but to breathe. Whatever happened next would be real. The first hour passed quietly. No explosion of notifications, no dramatic surge, just stillness. Susan began to worry. By evening, orders slowed. Several pending inquiries disappeared. A wholesale client postponed a large purchase. Silence grew louder than criticism. Had she miscalculated everything? Emily tried to stay calm. "Maybe it's just the algorithm," she offered again. But even she refreshed the page repeatedly. Views climbed slowly, painfully slowly. At midnight, Susan checked once more. The video had modest engagement. Nothing extraordinary. No viral spark. Just scattered comments. Her stomach tightened. She imagined the corporate executives watching, shaking their heads knowingly, predicting her failure, proving her wrong decision. The next morning brought fewer orders than usual. The mixer stood idle longer than it had in weeks. Flour remained untouched on the shelf. Momentum felt fragile, breakable for the first time since starting. She allowed the thought to form clearly. Maybe Mark was right. Maybe safety was smarter. Maybe bravery was naive. She sat alone at the kitchen table. No contracts this time. No executives. Just her reflection in the dark screen. Doubt returned quietly. Then, just after noon, a notification appeared from an unfamiliar account. A woman in Arizona had shared her video. Caption: "This is my mother's story too." Comments began multiplying beneath it. Another share followed, then another. Women from Texas, New York, California. The numbers began moving faster, not explosive yet, but gathering, like wind before a storm. And Susan felt it shift again. By late afternoon, the notifications became relentless. Susan's phone vibrated across the kitchen counter. Names from unfamiliar states appeared rapidly. Women shared her video with personal caption. Their stories poured into the comments. "I was laid off at 61. They replaced me with someone half my age. I thought I was invisible." Each message carried the same undertone: recognition. The video crossed 100,000 views overnight, not because of controversy, but because of connection. National blogs began embedding the clip. Small business forums reposted it. Susan sat at the table in disbelief. This was not the validation corporations offered. This was raw, unfiltered, human, Orders returned, then doubled, then tripled. Her email inbox overflowed. Requests for interviews, invitations to speak on podcasts. Emily watched the analytics in stunned silence. "This isn't just about cinnamon rolls anymore," she said. She was right. The bakery had become a symbol, and symbols carry responsibility. Susan filmed another video. Not defensive, not triumphant, just grateful. "You are not outdated," she told the camera. "You are experienced. You are not behind. You are evolving." The words felt larger than her kitchen. They echoed beyond it. Women began tagging their own businesses: handmade soaps, consulting services, art studios, bookkeeping firms. A quiet movement was forming. Not loud, not aggressive, but steady, resilient. Susan looked around her kitchen that night. The same cabinets, the same oven, the same counter dusted with flour. Yet everything had changed. What began as coping had become conviction. And conviction, once ignited, does not return quietly to comfort. 2 weeks later, Susan filed official paperwork: business registration forms, tax identification numbers, licensing approvals. Susan's Second Chance Bakery. The document read clearly. The name felt bold, earned, permanent. Emily redesigned the website entirely. Clean layout, professional photography, a section titled Reinvention Stories. Submissions flooded in daily. The new mixer worked without pause. Packaging shifted from simple boxes to branded pastel cartons. Each one carried a printed message inside: "It's never too late." Local news stations requested interviews. A morning show invited her live, under bright studio lights. Susan told her story calmly. No bitterness. She spoke about dismissal, about doubt, about comments that tried to shrink her, and about refusing to disappear. The anchor wiped away a tear. Sales expanded beyond Illinois. Refrigerated shipping partnerships formed. Wholesale inquiries arrived weekly. But this time, Susan read every contract carefully. Mark called again. This time, his voice sounded different. "You were right," he admitted quietly. It wasn't triumph she felt. It was clarity. Helen stood beside her the day the first interstate shipment left. They watched the delivery truck disappear. "Not bad for a grandma hobby," Helen teased gently. Susan laughed freely this time. The label no longer wounded. It empowered, because she had defined it herself, and no one else would again. The television studio lights felt warmer than expected. Susan adjusted the small microphone on her collar. Rows of audience members filled the seats ahead. Cameras hovered silently on mechanical arms. Her name glowed on the screen behind her. Suzanne Miller, founder of Susan's Second Chance Bakery. The title looked surreal. Months ago, she had been carrying a cardboard box out of a corporate building in Chicago. Now she carried a different kind of weight. The host smiled as the segment began. "You've inspired thousands of women nationwide," he said. "What does success mean to you now?" The question lingered thoughtfully. Susan paused before answering. Success no longer sounded like salary figures, or corner offices, or corporate titles embossed on business cards. It sounded like ownership. "It means not shrinking," she said finally. "It means not apologizing for experience." The audience grew still. Her voice carried steady conviction. "And it means starting again without shame." After the show aired, new messages flooded her phone once more, but this time, they felt different. Not urgent, not overwhelming. They felt like community. Women sharing business plans, launching websites, registering LLCs at 55, 62, 70. Momentum had multiplied beyond her. Back in her kitchen that evening, Susan removed her blazer and tied her apron. The studio applause still echoed faintly in memory, but the scent of cinnamon grounded her. This was still the center. Emily stood beside her at the counter, no longer skeptical, no longer cautious, just proud. They worked in synchronized silence. As the oven door closed, Susan reflected on Conference Room B. On the word restructuring, on the illusion of permanence. She no longer felt anger, because being replaced had forced her to redefine herself, and in doing so, she had built something no corporation could eliminate. Outside, the suburban street remained ordinary. Streetlights flickered on. Neighbors returned from predictable jobs. The world had not changed dramatically, but she had. And sometimes, that is where revolutions begin. She lost her job, she lost her title. She lost her certainty, but she found something far more dangerous. She found herself. If Susan's story moved you, inspired you, or reminded you that it's never too late, make sure you subscribe to this channel, because here, we tell stories about second chances, courage, and women who refuse to disappear. And trust me, there are more stories like this coming.